I am with the international best-selling author, Jill James, right? Like, doesn't that feel really awesome
It does.
to say that? Because it's a thing. It's a thing. And you, like, I want to talk a little bit about your chapter first, because when we got together and when we all decided on writing our best piece of advice, and for some people it was the best piece of advice they ever received, and for others it's this is a piece of advice that, like once I give this to people, it solves 70% of their initial problems. And you get this piece of advice, you can really run with it. So what would you say the core message of your chapter is, that piece of advice that you would give people that changes everything for them when they understand this?
Yeah, for me, it is you don't have to separate who you are and what you believe in when you walk into owning a business. Those things, I think in so much of my professional life, I saw people say, well, this is me outside of work and this is me inside of work, or there's a set of rules that we have to follow to be successful in business. And I found that to not be true, that who you are in your day-to-day life and what you stand for, when carried over into how you design and operate a business, is very, very important and makes it a better business for you. And it makes you more successful because then you are not building a business around something someone else wants. You're building a business that you can feel good about and that you want.
All right, like we come to these conclusions, we come to this awareness usually the hard way,
Mhm.
right? There's usually, not always, there's usually a backstory for where we come to this conclusion. What would you say the backstory is for you, if I can be so bold and get personal?
Sure. Well, I think through a number of industry and career switches, I continue to think like this is the place. Oh, this environment will appreciate that I am this way and these are the things I believe in. And I kept going, from starting off from investment banking and then in personal financial management and then in technology startups, right? Each place I thought, okay, well, there's more space in this next place for me and what I think and how I want to do it. And in each place, I found that there was this strict limit of shareholder value, or the board says we have to do this, or this is just the way things are, suck it up, buttercup. And I continued, kind of through this 15-year cycle until I started my own business and started working with other entrepreneurs where we really had control to say, I don't want to do it that way. And then in the last 10 years with my business, as I have met up with people who said, I don't want to do it that way. How could I do it? That's kind of sort of been the growth of that discussion of we are not plugging them into this is a way, put your business idea in here and it comes out the other side with this much money and an exit. It's really like what do you want this to be? And then what are the things that are available to you if that's how you want it to be? And I've just found that process of business design to be much more fulfilling and people stick with it. I mean, most of the people that I've worked with over this time, they might have pivoted in their business, but they're all still entrepreneurs. They don't stop being an entrepreneur. They probably start more businesses once they figure out how to do this. So that's been my arc of just how can I really be true to myself and still run a good business.
Why do you think like, I think this message is super timely, right? It's always core to how you want to do business in general if you want a semi-happy life, I believe. But right now in this particular environment, why is this message really key?
Yeah, I find more and more that I find fewer people that feel like they have agency in their lives, that there is a wave of things that happen to them. And if they don't jump on and ride that wave or try to ride that wave, there is no other option. The ocean is large. There are many waves. And I think in an environment where people feel like there's a lot of change happening, a lot of things are out of their control, But they want the world to be different in certain ways through your work. I mean, think about how much time we spend in our work doing things that are meaningful to you and change making every day. Suddenly that's, 8, 10, if you're an entrepreneur all the time, hours of your brain thinking in a positive, how can I use my work for this change? And I think that's just very bringing back your agency to think, this is a thing that I can do even as the environment around me changes, my day to day, I can still, have my livelihood and do it in a way that feels good to me and take care of the people that work for me and my family and my community. I think that is what so many people want to be able to do and also, earn a healthy livelihood. And that's really the message of my chapter.
I think that this core message is core to everything that you do with your clients. I think it's the core message that attracts them into your world. And just to reiterate, they are founders who are moving from the smaller arena into a larger arena when things get more and more complicated, where you start doing stuff without really understanding why you're doing it. And some of that has to be dialed back if you're going to be creating a business model that's going to work for you. But how would you describe how this shows up in your work, how it is the core, even if it's an example of somebody that you work with privately and getting them dialed back into
Mhm.
what it is that makes their life livable in their own business?
Sure. Sure. I mean, I'm going through this right now. I mentioned to you that I'm leaving my discussion with you to go get on a plane and facilitate an offsite for a client that I've had for quite a long time. And the business has been through many, many iterations. And I think it's been a process for that founder to say, this is who I am. It is not just about I am known in this industry. We're now in a place where, it's really a different conversation about not just we want to do this kind of work in this industry, but we want the industry to be different, right? And that's been sort of a multi-year discovery of by again being true and taking a different path in this industry to now have an opening and be so respected to be able to say like we're taking the conversation and how things are done here in a different direction. And that's really amazing. And then the flip side of it is we do this annually and we talk about the old patterns that creep in. And it is very, very hard to not, when you were surrounded by people who are, kind of doing it the conventional way, to not say, let me try some of those things. It's working for them. Let me see if it'll work for me. And suddenly we have to rein back in, into no, you said you didn't want to have to work every Saturday. No, you said you wanted to have vacation with your family. You said that, we were not going to work like this again this year. And we did. And I think that's, a very difficult just thing to overcome of our expectations of what it looks like for us to be productive and be entrepreneurial. And just having that discussion on a regular basis of this is still what I want, even if I haven't executed it to perfection yet, it's still what I'm striving for.
How are you going to leverage how are you going to leverage this chapter being part of this book that's won, some major kudos? What do you envision doing with this? Do you know?
Well, the chapter really came out of a bigger book that I'd been working on, and I had to set it aside about a year ago. And I was so grateful that you came to me with the opportunity to condense these ideas just into a single chapter to keep going with that. So my intention is to finish that bigger book, a whole book about this with more examples from my clients of how they have, designed their businesses and what kinds of execution challenges they have. Um, and then in addition to that, just to, be able to work with more people. I think I've had a couple of new fellowships where I have like new mentees, and, being able to work with some people who I don't know that traditionally would be able to um, afford my services. And, an organization has said, we will pay for her for you. Right. We want you to be able to work for her with her. So, being able to have those kinds of opportunities, I think, to, reach a broader group of entrepreneurs, particularly like in the arts and creative fields who, their business may not grow to the level where, where it makes sense to hire someone like me, but to be able to do some of this foundational work with new entrepreneurs who are just starting out in their careers, I think is really fulfilling for me.
Yeah. Just on a like as a personal reader note, like you read like a lot of the authors didn't know what the other one was writing about. So you're coming into this blind, there are certain categories and it becomes like, I don't know what other people are going to write. But did you find that there was any particular chapters that really resonated with you or that you 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 thought like that's useful for me?
Yeah. So I mean, a long time ago, I read The Abundance Code. So it is interesting to see the updates in the life of a person who wrote a book like that. This is my mindset, and still, this is how things play out sometimes, and challenges that I have, even though I have an abundance mindset. So I think, yeah, Jennifer's chapter for me was a really good one. I think, again, because I knew some of her other work, and bringing that into a more personal level versus the abstract concepts that are in that book. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, awesome. Any final thoughts? Because I want people, first of all, I want people to know you and I want people to know what it is that you do and how you can help them so that if it's not that person, it's somebody in their world that they would immediately point to your chapter, to your work. What kind of message would you leave behind?
Sure. Well, I do think, again, if you want to be a business owner and you want to have, a certain kind of life, and you don't think that goes together, right? Having children or having a more condensed schedule, right? That and entrepreneurship is an all out, all the time affair. There are many ways to be successful in a smaller sized business. We just don't hear those stories as often, right? Because we're not getting venture funding. We tend to not have PR agencies. But there are so many business owners that are small to mid-size that have very healthy companies that have never taken a dime from an investor. You can if you want to, but have grown something that's really doing good work, and growing their community, creating good jobs, and really, fulfilling for them, and also making a good living, right? And they are truly CEOs of these businesses. And there is a way to do that. You have to step through the growth, right? It is very challenging to continue to do this, with guardrails. But it's very possible. And so I think for that person who's, thinking, I like being a solopreneur, I'm fine here, or, this size of business, maybe I've thought about being bigger, but it seems like I'd have to give up a lot. That this is really a way, like talking with me or reading my newsletter or reading my chapter is a way to think about, like, what could I do? Just open to the possibilities of, is there a way that I can have this the way that I want it? And what would that look like? And I think it's just that openness to have a different kind of conversation around what you could do with your work and your business.